Hi, and welcome to the Lensrentals podcast, where we talk about images and the people who make them. I'm Roger Sakala, the founder of Lensrentals.com.
Welcome to the Lensrentals podcast. This is Ryan Hill. I am here with Jimmie Harvey.
Hello.
And Kendall Richardson.
Hi there.
And we today, for a spooky seasonal Halloween episode, are going to recommend some horror movies to you. Some movies we think you should see that might help you, a filmmaker who's interested in this kind of thing. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to go around the table. We're going to talk about a movie we picked out of the genre. We're going to talk about what we like about it. And we're going to talk about what we think you can learn from it. And I'll start, if that's cool. My first pick, I guess we'll start from 10 and go up. That adds a little bit more drama to it. So I'll call this number 10. So the first movie I want to talk about is Pontypool from 2008. It's Canadian. And generally, I guess plot-wise, it's like a pseudo-zombie movie. Opens with two radio hosts in just a small studio, a small town in Canada. And they're sort of going through like a very early morning news show. They're doing weather, they're doing traffic, they're doing just like little joke calls, the kind of thing you would hear on your way to work. And eventually, as it goes, they start to get calls about people behaving strangely in the neighborhood, and eventually come to find out that it's sort of a zombie story, but told exclusively through phone calls and news clips in this radio station. So I think that's cool because of the sparseness of what is involved there. It's two actors, no action, no blood really, just a really tight script and really incredible sound design that just creates this atmosphere that's unlike anything I've seen in a movie. And I think filmmakers listening to this can learn from that, that, you know, with creativity and interesting use of resources, you can make a lot out of a little, and really kind of create an interesting story out of not so much. You don't have to spend a ton of money.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And I like the thought of horror in the unseen. You mentioned not a lot of blood, gore, or anything like that. Kind of theater of the mind, if you will, which kind of makes sense for a radio show.
Yeah, it's a really good point. A lot of these phone calls that come in are terrifying because you can't see what's happening. If I was seeing cheap Canadian zombie effects, I would be taken out of it. But I can picture something that's scarier to me than what probably a low budget can create.
Lots of underlying tones.
Right. It's thematically interesting. The way that you find out this infection or whatever spreads is it's verbal, right? So there are tics, right? People will start to kind of repeat words and then eventually chant and eventually just babble nonsensically. And it's a really scary thing to hear over a phone, like somebody calling in and like, I'm near this crowd and they're just saying nonsense. And then the person on the phone starts repeating the same word over and over. And it's an incredible effect that costs no money. It's really, really scary.
Kind of a new take on a idea that has been kind of run into the ground.
Right. Yeah.
There's always
zombie stuff, especially. That's not the kind of thing I'm normally into, especially like new zombie stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. The genre is not very inventive, but yeah, that one's really great. What do you got? What's number 9?
Number 9 would be, there's this awesome French film from 1960 called Eyes Without a Face. It is directed by Georges Franjau. Shot all in black and white. The main premise is this young girl. She has a horrific car wreck, and her father is kind of a mad surgeon. And so he's trying to do anything he can to make her face the way it used to be. And him and his assistant kidnap young girls, take them back to the lab and experiment on them. It was definitely one of the first films I saw, probably in my early 20s, where the whole term of like body horror came into effect. I'd never really seen it before, especially in a black and white film, especially in 1960.
Right.
It was banned because of the extreme violence in it, which, it's black and white, so you don't really get to see gore and blood, but the effect is there. It's a very poetic kind of movie. The score from Maurice Jarre, everybody knows him from, Lawrence Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, these classic films. Eyes Without a Face was one of his first ones, and it's very poetic, lots of nice piano, and there's an underlying tone like you don't know what's going to happen next. And I think that's what made it so effective. Lots of imagery of like doves and religion. And the main thing is like your outward appearance, how people perceive you, and how other people will do anything to keep that perfect. Still one of my favorite horror movies.
Spoiler alert for the listener, I looked at this list a little bit ahead of time, so I know what's on Jimmie's list. And a lot of it is older stuff, and that interested me. And I think there is definitely, especially from that period in the 60s and earlier.
Big time.
There's a disconnect aesthetically that makes everything just a little bit weirder.
Right. Especially for 1960, like this movie, there's not like jump scares or crazy monsters. It's more like, oh, this could actually happen. And that's true horror to me.
The makeup is incredible and very, very minimal.
Big time.
And it's, like you said, not jumpy scary, but like just a atmosphere of
atmospheric, very like
weird
psychological.
Tension. Yeah.
The tension it's pretty unreal. Like I've seen the movie probably 15 times, and every time I watch it, I'm a nervous wreck every time I watch it.
All right. We ready for number 8? Kendall?
All right, so I'd like to talk about Frankenstein, James Whale's 1931 classic. I don't really feel like there's anyone that doesn't know the story of Frankenstein. But in case you don't, mad scientist, thinks he can play God. That's pretty much it. Things go wrong, of course. So the things that I love about this movie, and this is kind of a constant for me, I love when a tone is set properly in a movie and is carried through consistently. So this movie starts from the get-go with a really cool thing that some Universal classics do. There is a setup in a theater by an MC that is warning you about the horrors you're about to see. And seeing it as a modern moviegoer, it's hard to see the elements in this movie as scary just because it's 2019. It's been a long time. You kind of just have to think like these people are seeing things like this for the first time. The tone of this movie, it's set straight out the gate as just chilling. Another element I really like in this movie is the lighting, which is played with quite a bit. Another through line for Universal classics.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Right.
And on your point of people, kind of seeing this stuff for the first time, those 30s Universal monster movies really established an aesthetic that is around still. Like if you watch Young Frankenstein or something doing that sort of thing today, it feels like a parody or referential. I don't know. It almost feels like that look and that feel have just been in the ether forever and didn't come from anywhere and just existed. But this was like the start of a look that is still going.
And just the richness of black and white. It can tell so much more than, your average color film.
Right. Yeah. And that noir lighting is incredible.
Exactly.
And truly, this movie, it does have some really scary elements that are still frightening today.
The scene with the little girl still makes me really nervous every time I've seen it.
That scene literally made me emotional. I cried.
Yeah. Big time.
Because just this whole theme, the theme that man is the monster.
Mm-hmm.
And this creation that man brought about is just navigating the world and so misunderstood and just wants love.
He just wanted a friend.
And he just drowned her.
Yeah.
I don't really know how.
Spoiler.
It's a real bummer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he immediately knows that he's done something wrong and runs for help, and he can't find it because he's this monster that everyone's horrified of. And it's just so sad and so touching, and just it hurts. It hurts to watch that.
What do you think filmmakers could learn from it? What if you were going to go make a movie, what lessons would you take from Frankenstein?
Maybe the simplest stories can be the most effective.
That's true.
It doesn't have to be 17,000 different storylines all connecting in a universe.
Yeah.
Something very simple usually is the most effective.
I think too, and we covered this a little bit. This goes back to Eyes Without a Face. Also, Pontypool. There is a power in silence a little bit.
Yes.
Boris Karloff is incredible in that movie.
Agreed.
And you're not getting Boris Karloff VO saying, "Here's what I think
Exactly.
about the situation that I'm in." He's more powerful for not being explained.
Right.
And I think the confidence to just sort of let things be what they are and not
without
over-explain.
tons of unnecessary exposition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The characters that don't talk are usually the most effective and most terrifying
Yeah.
Very true.
because you never know what's going to happen.
All right. I'm going to jump in with number 7. I would like to talk about Midsommar.
Hell yes.
This was 2019, directed by Ari Aster. I should preface this by talking a little bit about what I like about horror, and this especially applies to this movie. I think what I find interesting about the genre is that there are, like any genre, tropes, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing a director, screenwriter, actors working within an established set of rules. And what I think Midsommar really succeeds in most is establishing and completely exploring a central theme through a genre. And in Midsommar, I think that is mainly accomplished through production design. So filmmakers who are listening to this, if you're generally unfamiliar with production design, think of production design as sort of a director of the art department. Your production designer is overseeing the props department, the sets department, the art department, sort of controlling the visual look of a film. And what I found so powerful in Midsommar is you're exploring the central theme. This is ostensibly a movie about a group of college students who go to a small village in Sweden and are involved in sort of a cultish series of rituals
Right.
that end up being pretty scary. So that's on paper what this movie is about. But more generally, it's about grief, processing grief through trauma. The production design of this film, from the art to the props to the sets, are all pointed directly at that theme. Every frame is filled top to bottom with paintings and runes and sets that make you feel like you're a part of this place, but also express that theme of process of grief through trauma,
Right.
which I found really great.
Lots of pastel colors that hide something very horrific.
Right. There's that painting that opens the movie.
Yes.
Do you remember that? It's
Yep.
it's on screen for like 5 seconds and then sort of opens up as if you're watching a play, as if it's like a curtain or
Right.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched this for like the 3rd time last week, and I paused that and looked at it really closely. And it's not like explaining the plot of the movie, but there are images that recur
Mhm.
and expressing an idea through art.
Definitely.
Like the most satisfying definition of art I've ever heard is art is anything that's about more than it's about, right? So
I feel that.
yeah. It's the production design of this movie. Every little bit goes toward making this movie about more than it's about. You're not just seeing these people go through this experience. You're understanding more about the human condition through
Right.
it.
Definitely. Like, I think about the 3rd time I saw it, I noticed paintings on the wall that I never noticed before. And the more you see stuff like that, you know it's a good film if you can pick up stuff every single time you watch a movie that you
Yeah.
never noticed before.
Down to the tiniest props.
Exactly.
Silverware
Yep.
feels like it belongs where
Yep.
it is. All the tablecloths, all the costume design,
Yep.
especially, is incredible.
Even the food they were eating, there were certain scenes where it's just like, wow, I never noticed that before. But that
Yeah.
foreshadowed other things later on.
I do feel like I have to say that I love Midsommar as well. But even though it is, I've heard it classified as an art film, there are layers to it. And at top layer, it is still a very accessible movie.
Oh, 100%.
Big
It's
time.
not.
Yeah.
I know of a lot of folks that were like kind of put off by it because it was referred to as an art film.
Yeah.
But it's just such a good watch, and just the fact that all of these horrors can unfold in solid daylight.
Yeah.
It's another big element
The
of
vast
that.
majority of the movie is taking place in just bright, broad daylight. And it's exposed in a way that's really, I don't know, it's a touch brighter than it would be in a normal movie. Not to the point where it's overexposed, but all the outdoor stuff is like a half stop above where you would put it normally. And it
kind of the washed out kind of look.
Yeah.
It's like ethereal, kind of got that look to it.
All right. Number 6.
Number 6. It's a 1973 British film called Don't Look Now from director Nicholas Roeg. Basically, the whole film is Donald Sutherland, Julie Christie. Their family experiences a huge loss. They moved to Italy he studies paintings and is restoring old churches. While the entire time, there is a faceless killer stalking the streets of Italy. You don't see it. You hear it. You see shadows. I think the thing that most stuck out with me about this is the director, the way his directing style is. He is very, very well known behind the camera. He started off as a cinematographer in some of the greatest films ever made, Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia. He worked on some of those. Then he was like, I'm going to try directing. He made Don't Look Now. Serious use of like Steadicam, like you're right there the whole time. Lots of close-up shots of eyes, lots of freeze frame shots, slow motion. He was doing that when hardly anybody was doing that. Lots of saturated colors. There's not a lot of violence in it, but when it happens, you definitely remember what happens. Lots of like deep reds, and the 70s were a ridiculous time for overly exaggerated makeup and effects, and blood is very, very deep red.
It is a very 70s movie.
Big time. All the way to the clothes, the hairstyles, and
a lot of big sweaty suits.
Yes. And a lot of the scenes in it, they only had a few takes to do. One scene in particular, Donald Sutherland's in the church on rafters. It actually collapsed, and he's basically hanging on for dear life. And so what you see in the film is him actually holding on, because if he falls, he's dead. And the director is like, we're going to keep it going. And that's what you see in the film. It's Donald Sutherland almost plunging to his death.
Donald Sutherland is
one of the greats of our time.
He's insane in that movie.
Yes. Yep.
He's very, very good and very, very like pure uncut Donald Sutherland.
Yes.
He's got a huge mustache.
Yes.
I remember that.
Huge hair.
I haven't seen this movie in a while, but I remember a big mustache, and I remember him looking very uncomfortable in his suit.
Yes. I highly recommend the Criterion edition. It's the definitive edition of this film.
What do you think a filmmaker should take away from it?
I definitely think if they're wanting to make a film, I'll always say use a Steadicam, slow motion shots. Don't make it, just use it as your own like fluid device. Sometimes those shots can be overplayed, but if you do it correctly, like Nicholas Roeg did, you're going to have something that's going to last forever.
Let's do this. Let's take a break real quick, and we will come back, start with number 5, and go up.
Cool.
Welcome back to another Employee Spotlight. I'm Joey Miller, and today we're here with Jason Rawlings. Say hello.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
All right. What do you do here, Jason?
I'm a video tech here. So basically what I do is inspect equipment before it goes out to make sure all the cameras and booms and everything are tip-top for customers to use. Yeah.
You also do some of our troubleshooting phone calls, right?
Yeah. I take calls from customers if they're having issues with equipment or trying to figure out what works with what best. I can help them out there.
He's a very smart man, people. You've probably talked to him on the phone.
Very true, very true.
What did you do before you worked here?
I did a lot of sales before I came to Lensrentals. So I worked for Frito-Lay, worked for Community Coffee, and just did a lot of kind of business sales as far as coffee and potato chips. Yeah.
What's your video background?
Video background. Studied at U of M. Made several shorts. Made a couple of features. And just generally like playing with video equipment.
Anything we could see online?
Yeah, you can. On my Vimeo, there's the feature I worked on, Bird Dog, and 81 Days, I think, is on there. And then a lot of shorts, yeah.
We'll put some links in the show notes to that. So, if you didn't work here and you could do anything, what would you do?
If I could do anything, I guess be a filmmaker, right? So, I mean, that would be the goal. But I love working here. So, other than that, making movies, yeah.
So you're a big film person, big film buff.
Mm-hmm.
I asked this of another one of our employees. If you could have dinner 2 hours with any filmmaker, dead or alive, who would it be?
Any filmmaker, dead or alive, probably Kubrick. Just pick his brain. Yeah.
What's your favorite Kubrick film?
2001: Space Odyssey.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah,
it's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
You take a lot of stuff home?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a big fan. Yeah.
What's your favorite piece of gear to use these days?
Favorite piece? Anything in the Panasonic line. I like the Panasonic S1 is the camera I really like using. Can't wait to take a look at the S1.8. So
yeah, we just got those in.
Yeah, I'm excited to play with that. So
you're going to be stuck on an island for a year. What 5 things do you bring?
Oh God. Well, let's hope that there's Wi-Fi. So I'll bring. Oh wait. Trick question. My family. And Netflix subscription. My Birkenstocks, comfy shoes. What do I bring? I bring a book. What do I bring? Confederacy of Dunces. That's 3-4 things?
Yeah, I think I got one more.
Just a yoga mat.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like a cozy vacation, actually. So I know it's early in the year.
Mm-hmm.
Oscar predictions. Who do you think is going to take Best Picture?
Best Picture. What's coming out that's good? Maybe Joker will surprise everyone and take on Best Picture since it's won Venice. So
right.
Yeah, maybe Joker.
I guess we'll find out in February, right?
Yeah.
All right. And this has been an Employee Spotlight with Jason Rawlings. Now back to the podcast.
We're back. I'm here again with Jimmie and Kendall. We're talking about 10 horror movies you should see and what you can learn from them. We're on number 5. Kendall, what is number 5?
My next choice is Evil Dead 2, Sam Raimi's 1987 follow-up to Evil Dead. So this is pretty common for me, apparently. I just realized I kind of have the same thing noted about all of my choices. But tone in this movie, I love it. It's just balls to the wall silly.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally just like a feature-length Three Stooges episode. And it's pretty well known that Sam Raimi takes influence from Three Stooges. He even calls his, instead of stunt people, they're credited as shimps, which I think is so cute. So yeah, it's just super silly. I love it.
You're right. Tonally, it's he does the same thing in Evil Dead, where it's jokey but still scary. It's not the kind of thing I've seen anybody but Sam Raimi really nail in that specific way.
And he gets imagery down pat so well that it's even a tonally funny movie is horrifying. It's chilling. Yeah. It's scary.
What do you think makes you prefer Evil Dead 2 to 1? Or do you?
I do. I prefer 2.
They're really similar.
Yeah.
It's almost a remake more than a sequel.
Yes. And part 2 revisits part 1 quite a bit. I don't know. I think I just like a more silly tone. That might come from the fact that I'm still new to horror and I'm kind of just dipping a toe into the pool and I kind of want to stay away from super scary. Some other things I like, of course, Sam Raimi and his team. Practical effects are always on point.
Yes.
Makeup always on point, and they can do it. They did it with zero budget.
Right.
There are little, back to part one, there are parts you can see like Sharpie drawn on to people's faces and like fingernails, and you see glue coming up. It's charming. I like it.
That cabin is in Tennessee, right?
Yes.
The cabin where they shot Evil Dead? That's a fun fact.
One of my friends stole a brick from it. Got chased out of the woods by a guy with a shotgun.
Oh my God, I bet that happens all the time.
And their name is...
Exactly.
One of my favorite parts of this movie is a really cool practical effect where Ash, I honestly can't remember what he kills. He kills something. He kills a lot of stuff. But blood sprays all over the room and covers a light bulb, turning the frame red. And that is a really cool touch to that movie that I've always, always loved.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's something I think filmmakers can take from that, it's like practical effects, doing what you can with what you have. There's a common theme with a lot of this stuff. Horror is sort of about doing what you can with
exactly.
a low budget and doing it creatively.
I don't really know if I have advice for a filmmaker except from this, like, have fun. Like, this movie is so fun. And it looked like it was fun to make.
Exactly.
I'll move on to number 4. I want to talk about, I saw this movie for the first time last week, One Cut of the Dead. It's from 2017. It is a Japanese student film by, I'm going to butcher this name, Shinichiro Ueda. And I don't want to say too much about it because I think you should go in not knowing where it goes.
Right.
But I will say that at the beginning of it, at least, it is 3 things that I normally never want to see, which is a student film about zombies shot in one take.
Yep.
Like, those 3 things could not be less interesting to me. But I promise you, if you get over that cynicism and get into the movie, it takes you to some places that are really, really interesting. And generally, it's about some student filmmakers who are shooting a zombie movie in this abandoned warehouse, and it turns into sort of a zombie situation.
Right.
But it goes to some really unexpected places. I think it's really, really worth seeing. Mainly, what I think filmmakers can gather from it is not super technical. Just, I think it's a really inspirational thing to watch. It was shot as part of a like filmmaking, directing, acting workshop in Japan. These are all student filmmakers. Shot this thing for $25,000. It became huge in Japan. It's made $25 million worldwide. Just got picked up by Shudder in the U.S. and has been going around to film festivals. It won awards at like Fantastic Fest,
nice,
South by Southwest. It's a story about how, like we've been saying over and over, you do what you can with what you have, and if you do it creatively enough, you can surprise people.
Right.
And this is foremost a surprising movie. I, again, don't want to go too much into it, but find this movie and watch it. It's on Shudder. I watched it on Shudder. It's a streaming service.
Shudder rules.
Specific. Yeah, yep. It's great. Sign up for a 7-day trial of Shudder. Watch this movie. You will be surprised and not disappointed. It's awesome. And I think we're ready for number 3.
My pick would be Suspiria, Dario Argento's 1977 seminal film about madness. Something that very still to this day sticks out to me is the use of color, the art direction in this film. Once again, going back to lots of red in the 70s, over-exaggeration of blood and, I wouldn't say gore, but more just very intense scenes. Pretty unnerving score from Goblin. The color design, the art direction, definitely for filmmakers, I think that's a big thing in horror, is making sure you get those elements right, because those can definitely set the entire tone of the film. Going back to Midsommar, like, that's what you remember. One of the big things I remember about it, those pastels and those washed out colors. And you ask anybody that's seen Suspiria, you're like, oh, all those crazy reds and blues and very like muted colors when she's outside, and when she's in the ballet academy, it's totally different. It's almost like she stepped into hell.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with going like dark and drab. It's most horror movies, but yeah, Suspiria is a look that it is unto itself in that movie. It's very, very original.
Big time. All of Argento's movies, like especially like the colors and
Mm-hmm.
the man loves blood,
That's
and
true.
it works in almost every one of his films.
And that weird, specific, like opaque, pinkish,
Yes,
70s Italian B movie blood
exactly.
that like it does not look like blood.
Yeah.
Uh,
You definitely don't believe for a second, oh, that really happened. It's more kind of comical looking, but it's still
Mhm.
very effective.
It's that soundtrack too is it
Incredible.
rules. I'll drive around town and listen to that Goblin soundtrack
Yes.
in my car.
I had it blasting in the office the other day, and my boss walked in and was like, this is terrifying, and walked right back out.
I'm going to put it in this episode somewhere. I'm going to use, maybe for our break music, we'll use some of the Goblin score. I think I can use less than 30 seconds without having to pay
I think so.
for it.
I know it's not a shining endorsement for Suspiria, but I'm not a huge fan of it. But I loved, if I could mute it and just play the score over it, it is so beautiful to see.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful movie.
And just the music is so good.
What do you think a filmmaker could take away from Suspiria?
Definitely very simple story. Going back to that, definitely less is more. I'm just going to keep saying that over and over. Sometimes the easiest thing is to make a very simple story that can get across the entire, point of view of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. All right. We're ready for number 2?
All right, so my next choice is Trick or Treat, which is Michael Dougherty's 2007 film. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this movie because I really just want folks to see it. I don't want to spoil anything about it. But it is, it's almost an anthology. It's more vignette-y than anthology-y, or those words that I just made up probably. It's just such a good movie. It is so well written. My very favorite thing about this movie, though, is costume design. The monster in this movie is practically a small child that's in just a horrifying costume. The mask, the removal of the mask, you just have to see it. It's incredible.
I know exactly what you mean, and I don't want to describe them either. I don't want to ruin it for people, but yes, suffice it to say that they're very, very scary.
It's like, you've all seen those retro Halloween costumes, just those horrifying masks that somehow a modern reimagining of those masks that are even more scary.
Yeah.
And they're not intended to be scary. They're just children. Costume design it's, in my opinion, its hugest advantage. Along with writing, of course.
Yeah.
But great movie.
Yeah. And I think that's especially one for beginning folks to watch because it's, like you said, it's not an anthology so much in that it's not like Creepshow or VHS or something. It's not disconnected stories made by separate people. It's a single director, but it is vignette-y. They kind of play like shorts a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think you could learn a lot from this if you're into short filmmaking. That horror sort of lends itself to the short format. All right. Anything else you want to cover with Trick or Treat?
I don't think so.
Are we ready for number 1? We have a collective number 1.
Yes.
Do you guys want to say it together?
Halloween.
Surprise.
Yes.
It's Halloween. It'll be Halloween when you listen to this, and we're going to talk about Halloween. I guess I'll start. I didn't really make any notes about Halloween. I'm going to have to go off the top of my head. John Carpenter, 1981?
Nope. 79.
79. Damn.
8. Oh, shit. 78.
It's 78?
Sit down, boys.
I was way off.
Sorry.
But yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis. There's probably nobody listening to this who hasn't seen Halloween.
Correct.
It's the seminal slasher movie.
We can't forget Deborah Hill, Dream Team co-writer.
That's true.
With John Carpenter.
Yep.
Yeah.
She's
and
great.
not just this, most of his stuff.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the slasher genre, like we said with Frankenstein, feels like it's been here forever and that it just sort of came down from the clouds and existed. But Halloween really, if not created that genre, because that's a little nebulous, at least solidified it and established a lot of these tropes and aesthetic patterns. And it is, what to say, it's a stone cold classic from beginning to end. It's awesome.
Just the opening credits alone, the piano, the flickering of the candle with the jack-o'-lantern. It still gives me chills every time I watch it. So many ridiculous, like, point of view shots.
Mm-hmm.
The camera's just following Michael Myers. You hear him breathing. That's another thing, is just him breathing. He never says a word in the entire film, but just that breathing will make the hairs on your arm stand up.
It's interesting how we sort of get these through lines accidentally, because that's straight from Frankenstein too.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Might as well be Frankenstein. In that movie.
Yep. The faceless killer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He doesn't say a word. And as that series goes on, you get 2 and 3 and 4, and you keep going, and you learn more about Michael Myers, and you wish you hadn't. It doesn't help. It's
very true.
Yeah, not knowing what's going on in there is the most important thing.
Which will lead me back to Eyes Without a Face.
Oh, yeah.
I read an interview with John Carpenter years ago that said that the inspiration for Michael Myers was from Eyes Without a Face. He wanted a mask that was completely lifeless and dead, and he saw this old film called Eyes Without a Face, and that's kind of him and Deborah collaborated, and they're like, yeah, that'll work. Then they found the old William Shatner mask and painted it.
He looks lifeless.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, this is probably like the best known piece of film trivia. That is a William Shatner mask, right?
Yes.
They just grabbed off the shelf and painted white.
Yeah.
The hair is the scariest part to me.
That's
terrible. I don't know why. It
Yeah.
should be the eyes, but that hair is so scary.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
So my favorite part of Halloween is the score. John Carpenter is just a musical genius. Fun fact, did you guys know that he wrote the theme for Shudder, the streaming service?
I didn't know that.
I did not know that. Nice.
We're going to give some free advertising to Shudder.
Yeah, we love Shudder.
A few hundred
Yes.
people. Please sign up for Shudder.
For real.
It rules.
Yeah, love the score. It's very effective. There's a track in the score called "The Shape Lurks" that I always get chills. It's a custom in my house that I have it playing Halloween night for the trick-or-treaters to hear, and I'm often scared that it's going to scare them away because it's truly frightening. Like, it's just weird to think that music can be scary, but it is so scary. It's so effective.
It's perfect for building tension. If there's something that people can take away from this movie specifically, is that slasher genre in general, it's all about tension.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an expert case in just building tension.
Something that we've mentioned that's kind of become an accidental theme here is that the fear and the horror in the unseen.
Yep.
So there's that horror in what we don't see, where there's not a lot of blood in this movie.
No,
most of the kills are off screen. But there's also that horror in what the characters in the movie don't see, because he's always lurking right around the corner, and it's just so scary to think he's right there.
Yeah.
It's so scary.
what you don't see usually is the most effective.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Right. The name of that song, it reminds me, he's in the script not referred to as Michael Myers. He's referred to as just the Shape.
The Shape.
This unknowable force, rather than like a person, which is this. I don't know.
I think the Shape is more terrifying
Right.
than the name.
Horrifying to
Right.
me.
And one of my favorite lines is Loomis just shouting, "He's not human,"
Yeah.
over and over and
Yeah.
over again. He's not. He's just like, he exists.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
All right. Well, I think that'll about do it. We got through all 10. If there's anything, I guess, broadly filmmakers can take out of this, is that there's power in not showing us everything, which is why I think horror as a genre is a good place to start for independent filmmakers. You be creative with the resources you have. You don't necessarily need to go all out and spend a ton of money.
Agreed.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to the Lensrentals podcast. You know what we should do? Here's what I'm going to do at the end of this. I'm going to give you guys Halloween names. We got to do Halloween names like The Simpsons.
Nice.
Jimmy Scarvey.
Mm.
Scarvey? That's pretty good. And Kendall Richardson. That's easy.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
That's a pretty good one.
This is the best day of my life.
Yes.
Kendall, you mentioned your podcast. Where can we find that?
I can be found talking nonsense about horror movies at the Carpenter Rants. Started out as a slasher series, and it's kind of just snowballed from there. We've kind of really talked about a lot. Currently on a Universal Monsters limited series. But yeah, the Carpenter Rants on every podcast service.
Nice. And Jimmie, where can we find you?
You can find me lurking on Instagram. I run a cult Instagram. It's cult_of_film. It's all trashy movies from the 70s, obscure stuff nobody's ever heard of, bizarre stuff that I love. Lots of hidden crap in there that you'll probably love.
All right. We'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes. Thank you guys both for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
Again, I'm Ryan Kill.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to the Lensrentals podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Lensrentals podcast. If you have any questions or comments, let us know at podcast@lensrentals.com. I'll leave you with this quote from Annie Leibovitz. You don't have to sort of enhance reality. There's nothing stranger than the truth.